Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. H. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Happy Friday.
Happy Independence Day.
Yes, happy Independence Day. We should talk about independence and trusting our guts today.
Well, when you mentioned that idea, trusting your gut feeling, your gut feelings. As a matter of fact, that's a great topic. That's a topic that we did not cover directly in the 12 Universal Laws of Success, but we covered it in we called the extra powers. Some of the in addition to the 12 laws, there are other laws of success, or laws of life, and intuition is one of them. And so for those joining us, what we're talking about today is based a lot on our book, The 12 Universal Laws of Success, which of course is available through our website on Amazon. The thought though of
Have it. Go get it, please.
yes, we've had
It's
a rage and
absolutely necessary.
we've had a lot of people. I got to share some of this, and we got to work this out. Letters from incarcerated folks who've been getting the book, and anybody who's incarcerated, if they write us, we send them a book. And I guess the word's getting out. We've been getting books out almost every day. And so the message in this book, the power message, is designed to give you tools to take control of your life, to design your life and make it happen the way you want it to. And when you were talking about that power of intuition, that inner voice, we have an internal guidance system. It's almost like we have a built-in GPS that tells us right from wrong, that tells us that really senses things about people, about situations. Many times when you meet people who don't treat you honorably, let's just put it like that, who don't treat you the way that you deserve to be treated, if you think back to when you met them, I guarantee that there was a little twinge, when you met them, there was like a signal came up inside, like, run, this is not the person that you should be with. And our conscious mind sometimes overrides that signal. Have you ever had that experience, Sade, when you meet a person and something inside says, I hear what this person is saying, they're saying it beautifully, but I don't believe them. I see what they're doing. They appear to be successful, but there's something that's just not right. You ever had that experience?
Of course, Dr. H. And I think what happens a lot of the time is we want to see the good in people, and that can distract us from the numerous red flags that may appear throughout the duration of relationships. So when you have a sort of perception of someone, you want to, I think it's more of our ego, because we want to prove ourselves right. It's less about the other person. It's more about, no, I couldn't possibly be wrong.
Yes.
So of course I've had several relationships, both romantic and just like, even business relationships, where I saw the red flags, but I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to be wrong. It was more so I just didn't want to be wrong. Or, you have your friends tell you something and you want to be the one to say, no, I told you so. I told you this person wasn't like that. So it's more so an ego thing.
Yes.
But if you pay attention, people are only able to pretend but so long. So it will show you right off the bat. The same day you meet them, you'll see a red flag, and it's up to you to decide if you want to move forward. Sometimes it'd be a parade of red flags. It's just red. Yes. But you pick up a red flag too, and now you're in the parade. And it really is. I mean, your book really teaches us that it starts with you and it ends with you. So at some you make the decision if you're going to join the parade, or if you're going to say, I don't want to be a part of this parade. I'm going to go back home and I'm going to just chill. But, a lot of us decide we want to join the red flag parade, and then eventually you get kicked out of the parade. Or if you're not engaging in that type of behavior, you may decide, good morning, you may decide that you it may become too overwhelming for you. But
Yes.
I think
Wow.
one of the things about your gut is essentially it's your intuition, it's your instincts. And what's unfortunate is that if you continue to ignore your gut over time, the siren that is our intuition becomes dimmer and dimmer. So eventually you won't even be able to hear it. So
Wow.
it's important that when we hear those sirens to identify the cause of them, because after a while the sirens won't even go off for you anymore.
Oh, boy.
Left
You
on
know,
yeah.
you've had some heavy stuff there, Sade. Hey, Dr. Monroe. What? That's one of my classmates, Lundy Monroe.
Good morning.
We went to high school together,
Nice.
and we were on the basketball team. He was a star, and I was the scorekeeper.
That's age.
But at least I got a pair of sneakers out the
Right.
deal. But Sade, you just hit on some powerful points, and one of them being that your intuition gives you a clue. But if you don't respond to it, all of life is about learning. We can learn the good things and we can learn the bad things. And so when you teach yourself to ignore the inner voice stops talking.
Yep.
Okay. Or it may still be talking, but you have so conditioned your hearing that you don't hear it anymore.
Yep.
And that's a scary situation because that inner voice is there for a purpose. It's almost like an innate ability that we have to figure out, to discern what is right and what is wrong, to establish the truth of any situation. We often find ourselves, you might say, controlled by our circumstances. And by that, I mean, sometimes a person doesn't want to be lonely. It's like, man, I was in a bad relationship and I finally got rid of them, but gee whiz, I'm really lonely. I don't want to be sitting here by myself watching the TV. I don't want to go places by myself. I really want to have somebody in my life. So somebody shows up and that intuition, that inner voice is saying, this is not the one. Yeah, I think Steve Harvey had, what's he call it, the 90-day rule, that before you get into anything serious with anybody, be around them for 90 days, because over that 90 days, what your intuition was telling you from the very moment you met them until that 90-day cycle, you'll see that your intuition was telling you the right thing. But we often let our circumstances cloud out the intuition. So it's like, I don't want to be lonely. Well, this person, I get all these bad signals, but boy, this emotion that I don't want to be lonely is so strong that I'll make excuses for them. Okay, you know what? They're going to change, They've had a hard life, and that's why they seem to be so negative. I'm gonna love them into something that they're not. It's like love is powerful, but love doesn't change anything. People have to change themselves. Sometimes you have folks say, man, I wish I could make them treat me better, And maybe if I treat them better, they'll treat me better. But if that's not in their nature, they're not going to change. They're going to continue doing the same thing that they've been doing all along. And so for our listeners, trust your judgment, trust your instinct. When that inner voice says something to you, stop and pay attention to it. We might, what, Sade, maybe you think of like the 120-second rule. Say, what's that? So when the inner voice says something to it, I love what you said. First, it sends up one red flag, then two red flags, then a parade of red flags. Okay. Well, when that first red flag shows up, step back. In the Bible, it says, go into the quiet place. Go into that place where it's just you and your creator, where you just shut everything out. So the 120-second rule says, when your intuition speaks, whatever you're doing, disconnect, stop, say, excuse me a second. Maybe go into the bathroom. Maybe go into the closet. And the Bible says go into the closet. But go into a space where you can and just surround yourself with quiet and think it through. Because once we surround ourselves with that quiet vibration, that inner voice can speak even clearly. And so you take that 120-second pause and it says, you know what? I've been here before. I've done this before. I got 4 t-shirts in my closet to prove it. Okay, I hear what they're saying, but I know what they mean. And so let me just graciously, you know, sometimes you get, there's an old saying say, well, don't snatch your hand out of the lion's mouth. You can be in a bad, once your intuition tells you this is not the best situation for you, you want to take your hand out gently. You know, now there's sometimes the message may be so clear that the only thing we call it the 3-letter solution. There's some people that once you know who they are, run. Just turn around and run. But many times you got your hand in the lion's mouth, so let me just ease it on out. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget it's a lion there, but you take your hand on out of there and get away. Well, whatever you do, listen to the voice within, because it will guide you.
Dr. H, I want to ask you a question about that, though, because sometimes we listen to the voice within because we've conditioned that voice based on limitations and old beliefs that we have. And what I mean by that is, unless you spend time in solitude, you may have a swayed perception of the outside, right? So when we talk about reprogramming and when we talk about creating your life, you may have been playing the victim for so long that you've trained yourself to see red flags that aren't there. Good morning, Cassandra. Let's say in relationships, for example, you may have some inner insecurities to where perhaps now you're dating someone new and he or she looks at her phone and now you depict that as a red flag, but in reality, it may be because you have some inner healing to do. So you can't necessarily always trust your gut if you haven't trained your gut correctly. So the only way to do that is to spend time in solitude. You may perceive something as a red flag that may not be a red flag, but you've trained yourself to only see the negative in the world. So you may think that's a red flag when in reality it may be them just checking their phone. Maybe their mom texted them. But you conditioned and programmed yourself to perceive things as red flags that may not be red flags. And that's why it's important as we transition out of relationships to take the time to do the work internally before we go outside. Because if you haven't done the work inside, then you're automatically going to take the old baggage that you have from your relationship into a new relationship, and it may not be the same. It's probably not, most likely it's not the same. The energy is different. But the only way the energy is going to be different is if you do the work. So that's very important. I think that while our internal intuition is very strong and we should trust it, we also have to train ourselves. We have to train ourselves to get rid of the old baggage that might hinder our ability to make sound decisions.
You know, Sade, you hit a lot of nice points there. I've seen people who are like serial relationists. Okay. They'll come out of one relationship and jump right into another. I have a couple of friends and I just have to stand back. You know, I used to try to give people advice that they don't ask for. and that's always a challenge. You know, the Bible says, seek and you shall find. But if they're not seeking, I don't care how much advice you give, they're not going to hear it. But this friend of mine goes from one relationship to another. And it's really a fear of being alone. That's really what's driving her. And a need for confirmation. That, you know, she's a person that always wants to look good. She'll always ask, do I look good? Do I look good? I'm like, yeah, you look good. You look good yesterday and you look good the day before. Why do you have to keep asking me that? Yeah. But she's never solved that internal situation of self. She's never gotten in harmony with yourself. And so when you come out of a relationship, give yourself a chance to regroup, refuel, and re-image. You know, every relationship is for a purpose, even the bad ones. I mean, many times you don't learn what not to do until you've been slapped in the face. You go like, okay, I won't do that again. Okay, maybe I didn't have a maybe I didn't listen to that inner voice, and I went out and jumped into this situation, and pow, I get smacked. I'm like, okay, I got it this time. So sometimes you have to get smacked to get your attention. But to really take that pause, and especially life needs clues. Let's put it like that. And so if you find that you've gone from one challenging relationship to another challenging relationship to another challenging relationship, then that's a clue that there's something inside that you need to adjust. The law of attraction says whoever comes into your life, you're calling them. You know, people just don't show up, but they show up based on a vibration that you're sending out. And so if you continue to meet people who don't honor you, people who don't treat you the way that you want to be treated, then don't complain about the people. Come and examine yourself. Go into that quiet place and say, well, what is it about me that's attracting people into my life who cheat, who steal, who lie? What is it about me that's attracting those people? Why do I keep attracting them? And it's mainly because you're ignoring that inner thing, that inner balance for yourself. You know, it's like, and maybe it's a need to be with somebody, and that need is so strong that you ignore all of their flaws, all of their defects. But if we go back and say, you know what, I always bring myself to the party. Let me just look at myself. Sometimes you have to ask people, and people you trust. Okay, don't you ask the wrong person, boy, they can mess you up.
And that's what I was going to say, Dr. H. People, you had said something before about people can only give you advice based on their level of consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be very careful and particular on who you allow to influence you, because, and that's the same thing when we talk about gut, because if you ask someone their opinion and they base their decisions, their viewpoint on the world is negative, then their gut is going to be negative, right? So they can't give you anything besides that, because they can only give you what they have, right? Only give you what they've been training themselves to believe. It's based on their habitual beliefs and thoughts. So their gut instinct is going to be based on their beliefs and their thoughts. And that's why sometimes while our gut instincts are a vital guide for us, we also have to train ourselves before we trust our gut, because our gut could be swayed based on old negative beliefs and limits. Mm-hmm. So, and the only way to do that is to spend time in solitude.
Yes.
Because spend time in solitude, you have to face yourself. And that's why people jump from relationship to relationship, because like you said, they may not be ready to accept that they're the cause of what's happening. They don't want to deal with that. They want to continue to play the victim. And that play the victim have a very poor sense of intuition. They have never sat alone long enough to think and contemplate and say, you know what, perhaps I am the problem here.
Yes.
Because you're always the problem, and that should not make you feel bad. That should give you, that's a sense of power for you. Because if you take responsibility, then you also take responsibility for the change.
Yes.
You understand that you are the end and the beginning of every circumstance that's in your life. So before you trust your gut, you have to train your gut. And once it's trained, then you can say, okay, I've spent long enough time alone to know that X, Y, and Z. And perhaps the gut, AKA the trigger, AKA the feeling that I'm feeling, is based on something that somebody told me a long time ago that I need to let go of.
Well, you know, that's some good stuff, Sade. I was thinking of, you know, people who've been in situations where they've been like an abusive situation, a physically abusive situation. And I was watching a TV program the other day, and the lady was saying how when somebody touched, you know, a lady was was stumbling, and when the man reached to kind of cushion her fall, she jumped back And when they traced the history, she had been in such an abusive relationship that she always thought that people were going to hit her, always thought that people were going to hurt her. And so as a result, she had developed an internal mechanism of protection. Okay. And so the moment you see something, you know, like it causes a situation. Now this is an interesting story. I once represented a person, and the person had committed a very violent act. They literally shot her father. And she said, and we were asking, so what made you do that? She said, well, he was beating my mother, and he kicked her to the point that she didn't flinch anymore. Okay. And she said, I thought she was dead, and that's why I shot him. And it's like, man, that's such a perception that where a person gets so hurt that they don't even respond to the hurt. So just sort of wrapping this all around, we have to, as you say, train our gut feeling to trust our gut feeling. If our gut feeling has become numb, then it's not giving us valid instructions. And it's like a yin yang. It's always an inner and an outer. If our gut feeling is, say, let this person into my life, and then the outer representation is one of pain and distrust and hardship, then you say, okay, I need to look at my gut feeling. What is it in my gut now that needs reprogramming? Because your gut feeling is really a you might say a collective of all the stuff that's happened to you, you know, of your collective experiences in the world, and from a child and even grown up. You know, from a man's point of view, we often, when we talk about relationships, so often we talk from a woman's point of view. But men have the same, they just have the flip image of some of the same problems. Like, say, a woman may not want to be alone. A man may have this need to be feared, to be dominant. You know, I was watch how people move to get an idea of their sense of the world. I was watching this man who walks, and his wife just sort of trundles along behind him. And that's his image of himself. Okay? And there are men who need that. And so they don't want a sharp woman who's got her intellect, who's got her own business. You find, Sade, and I admire you as a young lady who's moving up in the world in so many aspects, that you'll very often find that there are a lot of men who will be intimidated by a sharp woman because their own insecurity, they need to feel like they're somebody. They need to feel important. And so they'll surround themselves with people who will cater to that need, you know. So when they say jump, they'll surround themselves with people who say how high, okay? Where an independent young lady like yourself, who's got her own thing, her own business, when somebody says jump, you're like, excuse me? What are you talking about? And that's something with men, you know, men have some, I think men seem to be better at hiding their problems, their challenges, because it's kind of a male world. Like the one who writes the story, the lion always loses because the hunter writes the story. Okay. And so I think we live in a male dominated world. Like everything is really male. The pronouns are male. And so we often see the world from that perspective, but men have just as many issues as women do. It's just that they can mask it, okay? And then you have this paradigm of how a man is supposed to be. A man is supposed to be that men don't cry. Men don't do this. Men don't. You have that paradigm. And so all that stuff comes together to put some confused men in the marketplace. And young ladies like yourself who are clear and who trust you, who have trained your guts, trained your intuition now, have the ability to see them coming a mile away. It's like, hey, brother, hang in there. You know?
I feel like that's why it's so vital for men to have a strong woman beside them, because we can always spot the friends that aren't friends years before. We always are the ones to whisper, you know, I don't really like that guy. And you know, you'll be with your significant other and be like, why? That's my man. Why? What's up? You just, you know, something's not sitting well with me with him. Years later, it unravels. I think it's women definitely have a heightened sense of intuition.
Yes.
We that comes with femininity, and I think we're more receptive to guidance. And because it's a male dominated world, we're used to having to rely on our own devices in terms of intuition. We rely on that a lot more than men. They lead with masculinity, and we are more receptive to outside external circumstances. But again, I do feel like in a man's journey towards success, it's very important to have a woman beside him, even if it's not romantically, because we can always spot from 2 miles away.
Yes, yes.
2 miles away. We know the play a long time before they even catch on to it.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, so many times, I think every species has its strengths. The male has a, you know, even in the animal kingdom, the male has a, you might say, an instinctual strength to protect, surround, and protect. Okay. And the woman, the female, has an instinctual strength to embrace and love. You know, that it's a very natural thing for, it's like a woman, because of that capacity of being a mother, but it's just not being a mother. It's a normal part of our being. Each male and female each have different vibrations. We're not the same. Each has different vibrations and different strengths. We're at our best when we can come together to complement each other. And I think that's what you're saying. And so when we have a male who has the confidence and the self-confidence and the courage and the compassion to understand a female who has that intuition, that ability to love, and they can come together, they form, the mastermind principle is like off the hook when you're talking about a woman and a man working together, a male, female, and it's really a mindset. The masculine mindset, the feminine mindset, regardless of the sexes, but when you have the mindset working together, it creates a vibration of power. And so together, couples face the world together. Is that song, Me and You Against the World. Let's see, Cassandra said something very powerful. Wow. Yeah, so you spotted that. Yep. Women have an antenna. They can tune in.
Sandra, and
yeah,
he's lucky to have you, because women are, when you think about our anatomy, women are internal. We are internal creatures, and men are external. And because it's a male dominated world, I don't necessarily, and I may be wrong, I don't necessarily believe that they're never really forced to go internal. Whereas we, because of our anatomy, and a lot of women are, we've been conditioned to take whatever's left after and make them right. So that leaves us with really no choice but to go internal and train our intuition and our gut. And like Cassandra said, we're able to see a lot of things that they might not be able to see than they can. And I think it's just very, I mean, this is a whole different conversation, but every man really needs a good woman to spot the BS.
Yes.
They'll be so caught up in the weeds and moving and shaking that they don't ever really sit still and go.
Wow. Well, you know, this is a good place. We've been really sharing this insight for a while. Last night, there was, I guess, the conclusion of one of those New York Undercover, I think it was, one of those, you know, TV cop movies. And this is where, what's the guy, Cipollone, anyway, they finally brought the mobs, the gangsters down, you know, I guess the mafia or whatever, the criminal organization, they brought it down. And so they're in court, and the grandmother comes in, and the guy who was the undercover cop had everybody fooled except one person, the grandmother. And he said, she's the one that all along she said I was not who I was. She was the one, and the grandmother came in court and tried to shoot him in the courtroom. She said, because she always knew that in spite of appearances, in spite of all the things he did, you know, the gangsters gave him different tests and he passed all the tests. She said, but she had that gut feeling that he was not who he thought, who he said he was. And so to kind of conclude today, for men, we need to be more open to the feelings we have inside. Don't be so driven by the role. You know, everybody, Shakespeare said, everybody's on the stage. Don't be so driven by the role of what somebody else says a man is supposed to be. You know? And for ladies, trust your instincts. Trust you have automatically, you have a, as you said, that internal vibration. You already have a GPS system that can see beyond appearances to the vibration. You see, a person can't hide their vibration. You know, a thief is a thief is a thief. A liar is a liar is a liar. And no matter how you dress them up, they say you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Okay. So women, trust your judgment. Trust your judgment and take that time before moving from relationship to center on who you are. And for men, don't get captured by the role. Learn to perceive your judgment. The role often in men is so dominating that you have to back up for a minute and say, let me look at myself not as a man by their definition, but as a human being by the definition of my soul, and then act accordingly. Wow.
That's so much. Another Friday and a whole bunch of gems got dropped in this live. I'm so grateful. If you don't have the book, please go get the book. It's on Amazon. The 12 Universal Laws of Success. Grab two, one for you, one for a friend, so you guys can talk about it. Dr. H, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sade, for another fantastic Friday. And those of you who are listening, please share this once we post it and make some comments. I saw some beautiful comments the other day on one of our broadcasts, because when people read the comments, I think it really lets them know that many times people just have to know that they're not alone, that somebody else has had this challenge and they've spoken about it and overcome it. So each of us is a great teacher for people who need to hear. Always knowing you can be what you want to be, do what you want to do, have whatever you want to have, always knowing that the best is yet to come. Sister girl, thanks for joining us today.
Guys.
Cassandra, Nat Plush. All right, Shorty. Yes. Wow, what a great group. Thanks so much, folks. We'll see you again next Friday for Fantastic Friday. Always knowing you can be what you want to be. Do what you want to do. Have whatever you want to have. Always knowing that the best is yet to come. So it is. So many sad faces, gazing into space, waiting for somebody else to make the world a better place.